They mocked my gray jumpsuit and my shaking hands every single morning, until the day the new CEO walked into that lobby, looked at me, and said one word that stopped 400 employees cold: Dad. My name is Walter Combs. I'm 61 years old. For the last 4 years, I pushed a mop bucket down the 23rd floor of Kessler Tower in downtown Chicago, cleaning up other people's coffee stains for $11 an hour. Before that, I was somebody. I want you to remember that, because by the end of this, you'll understand why it matters. I used to run a small manufacturing company in Peoria. 40 employees, a good name, a house with a wraparound porch. My wife Diane passed from cancer 9 years ago, and something in me went quiet after that. I made bad decisions. I trusted the wrong partner. The company folded. The house went with it. And my son, my only son, Marcus, he was 22 then, freshly graduated from Northwestern, and he watched his father go from boardrooms to bankruptcy court in 18 months. He didn't take it well. He said I embarrassed him. He said a man who couldn't hold on to what he built didn't deserve to call himself his father. Those were his exact words, standing in a rented U-Haul parking lot the day I lost everything. Then he got in his car and drove away, and I didn't hear his voice again for 4 years. So I moved to Chicago. I took the only job that would take a 60-year-old man with no references, night cleaning crew at Kessler Tower. I told myself it was temporary. 4 years later, I was still there, still invisible, still wearing a name tag that just said W. The people on the 23rd floor didn't know my name. They knew my jumpsuit. Every morning at 6 a.m., I'd empty the trash bins outside the glass-walled offices while junior associates in $1,000 suits stepped around me like I was furniture. There was one man in particular, Bradley Voss, head of client relations, who made it a habit. He'd accidentally knock his coffee cup off his desk right as I passed. Every time, the same tired joke. "Careful, old man, don't want you breaking a hip on my watch." The others would laugh, not all of them, but enough. I never said anything back. I'd learned that silence costs nothing, and dignity is the one thing they couldn't mop off the floor with me. Every night I'd take the bus home to a 1-bedroom apartment in Cicero, heat up a can of soup, and sit by the window looking at a city that used to know my name. That was my life. Predictable, small, bearable, mostly, except for the ache of an empty phone that never rang. Then, on a Tuesday, in March, everything changed. I remember the weather, cold, gray, the kind of Chicago sky that presses down on you. I was refilling paper towels in the executive restroom when I heard it through the wall. A company-wide email had just gone out. Kessler Tower's parent company, Aldridge Global, had a new CEO taking over the Chicago division. Effective immediately, no name given yet. Just a 9 a.m. all-staff meeting in the atrium. Mandatory attendance. I didn't think it concerned me. Cleaning staff weren't invited to mandatory meetings that came with catered coffee and a step-and-repeat banner. But at 8:55, my supervisor, a nervous woman named Carol, found me in the stairwell and told me building services had been specifically instructed every employee, including maintenance, was to be present. I stood in the back of that atrium in my gray jumpsuit, holding my mop like a walking cane, surrounded by 400 people in suits who didn't know I existed. Bradley Voss was near the front, adjusting his tie, laughing with someone about corporate theater. Then the elevator doors opened, and a man in a charcoal suit stepped out. 31 years old, tall, composed in a way that made the whole room go quiet before he even reached the podium. I felt my chest tighten before my mind caught up with my eyes. It was Marcus, my son. He hadn't seen me yet. He was scanning notes, shaking hands with the board members near the front row. I wanted to disappear into the wall. 4 years of silence, and here he was, about to become my boss, and I was standing in the back holding a mop. He began his speech, professional, confident, the kind of voice that commands a room without raising itself. He talked about vision, about rebuilding trust after the last quarter's numbers, about respecting every person who kept this company running. Then his eyes moved across the crowd, doing what every good speaker does, scanning the room to connect with people. And they stopped on me. I watched the color drain from his face. His voice caught mid-sentence. The room noticed. 400 people turned to see what had stolen the new CEO's composure, and every single one of them followed his gaze to the old janitor in the back. He set down his notes. He walked, not toward the podium but off it, down the center aisle, past his own board of directors, past Bradley Voss's confused face, straight toward me. My hands were shaking. I didn't know if he was walking toward me to demand an explanation or to have security escort me out for embarrassing him twice in one lifetime. He stopped 2 feet away. His eyes were wet, and in front of every executive, every associate, every person who had ever stepped around me like I was invisible, he said, "Dad." The word hit that room like a thunderclap. I saw Bradley Voss's coffee cup actually slip from his hand. "Dad," Marcus said again. Quieter now, just for me. Though the microphone on his lapel carried it anyway. "I've been looking for you for 2 years." I didn't have words. I just stood there, mop in hand, while my son who I thought had erased me, pulled me into his arms in front of 400 strangers. Later, in his office, he told me everything. After I disappeared from Peoria, he'd spent a year angry, then a year ashamed, then 2 years searching. He'd hired someone to track down old business associates, old neighbors, anyone who might know where I'd gone. He said the guilt had followed him through business school, through every promotion, through every night he lay awake wondering if his father was even alive. "I said something unforgivable to you," he told me, his voice breaking in a way I hadn't heard since he was 12 years old and scared of a thunderstorm. "I judged you for losing a company. I didn't understand yet what it costs a man to build one, or what it costs to lose everything and still get up the next morning. I understand now." He hadn't known I was in this building. Aldrich Global had acquired Kessler Towers' management contract only 6 weeks earlier, and the staffing records hadn't crossed his desk yet. Fate, coincidence, whatever you want to call it, it put us in the same room. The following days weren't a fairy tale. I didn't wake up a millionaire. Marcus offered to move me into a penthouse immediately, and I said no. I'd spent 4 years learning that dignity isn't something someone hands you. You rebuild it, slowly, on your own terms. What I accepted instead was smaller and, to me, worth more. A real conversation every Sunday, a standing invitation to dinner, a son who called just to check in, not out of guilt, but because he wanted to. I did eventually leave the cleaning job, not because Marcus pulled strings, but because 3 weeks later, an old colleague from Peoria who'd heard the story through a mutual friend offered me a consulting role helping a small manufacturer restructure its supply chain. Turns out 30 years of business instinct doesn't disappear just because your bank account does. I took it. I earned it. And for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. As for Bradley Voss, nobody fired him, and nobody needed to. Word travels fast in a building of glass walls. His jokes stopped overnight, and so, gradually, did his standing with people who'd quietly noticed how he treated someone he thought had no power. 6 months later, he transferred to another office. Some people don't need punishment. They just need a mirror. I think about that morning in the atrium a lot, not the mop, not the stairs, not even the 4 years of silence. I think about the look on my son's face when he said my name, not the janitor, not old man. My name in front of everyone, without a flicker of shame. We spend so much of our lives worrying about how we look to people who will forget us by Friday, while the people who actually matter are sometimes just waiting for us to look up. I was invisible in that building for 4 years. It only took one honest word from someone who truly knew me to prove I never was.